Welcome to the Credible Nerds Podcast. We provide news, commentary, and reviews for all types of nerds, from the hardcore to the casual.
What's up, my nerd?
Hey, Nerd Nation. Welcome to the Credible Nerds Podcast. My name is Justin, and we are back once again, and I have my fellow co-hosts with me, Blake and Nathan. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good. Doing good.
Great. Yep. Cool. Good to have you guys back. A few weeks ago, we gave a preview of what we wanted to talk about regarding the upcoming Indiana Jones film, Dial of Destiny, that we wanted to go back and review the previous movies and kind of talk about them in preparation for that and rank them and talk about our favorite moments and what we don't like about them. And this is episode 1 of that series. We're going to talk about Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark is what it's being called now. So, but back when it was released, it was just Raiders of the Lost Ark. Did you guys see it in theaters, or what's the first time you saw it or were exposed to it, that type of thing?
So I was 5 when it came out, so I did not see it in theaters. I guess my parents were kind of good parents, but they did take me to Temple of Doom, and then afterwards I rented it from Sounds Easy Video. So I saw it on video right after Temple of Doom came out.
Oh, cool. So you saw it in chronological order.
That's right.
Because Temple of Doom was a prequel to Raiders.
That's right. I waited.
Did it make sense for you?
As a kid, it made total sense.
Okay. What about for you, Nathan?
I did see it in the movie theater, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with me. And it was one of my favorites. I don't know if I liked it better than Empire Strikes Back, which came out the year before, but it was definitely top tier for me. So
Yeah. Yeah, I loved it.
yeah.
From the opening credit to the end credit,
Yeah.
I was just like, that's the best movie ever.
Yeah. It was great. So just going to read a little intro, a little synopsis from Wikipedia to kind of frame what we're going to talk about in case you haven't seen it. This will be spoiler filled. I mean, it's 40, 50 years old. It's 40 years old, so you should go see it by now. But Raiders of the Lost Ark is a 1981 American action-adventure film directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Lawrence Kasdan, based on a story by George Lucas. Set in 1936, the film stars Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, a globe-trotting archaeologist vying with Nazi German forces to recover the long-lost Ark of the Covenant, which is said to make any army invincible. Teaming up with his tough former romantic interest, Marion Ravenwood, Karen Allen, Jones races to stop rival archaeologist Dr. Rene Belloc, Paul Freeman, from guiding the Nazis to the Ark and its power. So, set in 1936, so it's a period piece, I guess you could say.
Historical fiction?
Historical fiction. As far as that part goes, did you feel like, oh, this is like way back in the day in 1936? Did that feel authentic to you back then and now?
It did for me, yeah. Then and now, absolutely. Yeah.
And that was one of the things I liked about it, is just that you feel like you're there. The set pieces are great. It's on, a lot of the stuff is on location. This is before. There are some visual effects.
Kind of.
Yeah, they made a good try. But it's, the majority of the film is on location, practical effects, so it's like real. There's no CGI.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I loved it. Loved it. I like movies that are in that era, 1900, 1950. There's a romanticism about it, being a simpler time and, less complicated. And just, the idea. I'm pretty sure every kid that saw that movie thought, walked out of there wanting to be an archaeologist.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. What a boondoggle, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, the movie starts out, I like the Indiana Jones movies because it always starts out with this cold open where you're in the middle of something.
Yeah.
Right? It's the middle or the end of this previous mission that he has. And in this one he's trying to find this temple. It has an artifact in there, and they're in South America. I think it's Peru. And he's with these guides, and they're get to the temple, and there's all this action stuff that goes on, and then he gets the prize and escapes, and I don't know. So I don't think we had really seen a movie like that. That was like the first time I guess you kind of, with Star Wars, you kind of got that as well, but it still was the overall story. But with this, it was like, there's this story, and then now we're going to start another story for the main movie.
Yeah. You often hear George Lucas reference that these were based off of old-timey serials.
Yeah.
And that he kind of wanted to revisit that genre. Steven Spielberg always wanted to make a James Bond film, but he couldn't. They were like, nope, we're not going to let you do that. So this was George Lucas like, well, I got an idea for you. It's something I've been thinking about, where this action adventure kind of character, archaeologist, he already had the idea in his head. And so these George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Kasdan, of course, is a writer, as a screenwriter, has written some great screenplays, and have partnered with these guys for multiple movies. All of them, I think, especially that whole graduating class, because they all went to school together, basically, right? They all kind of introduced a whole new way of movie making and storytelling. Jaws with Steven Spielberg, Star Wars with George Lucas, that was just completely different than what had been previously seen. They were, Sylvester Stallone and Rocky was probably something that was newer than what people had typically seen, especially, and then in the science fiction realm, nothing like that had really existed before Star Wars. So yeah, they really changed storytelling, I think.
Yeah, definitely for the better, as well as visual effects, for sure.
Yeah.
So this movie had a $20 million budget. It was released in 1981, highest grossing film of 1981. Earned approximately $330.5 million.
Wow.
And played in some theaters for a whole year.
Wow.
Yeah, back in the day that happened, right?
Yeah, we don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
That's actually amazing. That at $330 million, like, to date.
No,
1981, $82.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, because I don't think maybe there was a re-release back then, but nothing recently.
No. Yeah. I mean, I'm just wondering if that's just box office tickets, or it's just that's like, okay, worldwide, globally, marketing, everything.
Yeah, I'm sure it was worldwide.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Worldwide, 330.5 million worldwide.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Earned Oscars, 5 Academy Awards.
It earned. Oh wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
And a BAFTA.
I'm assuming probably
The
costume
coveted
design,
BAFTA award.
set design, cinematography,
Score.
probably.
Yeah. None of the big ones.
I assume John Williams scored this
Yep.
as well, but yeah.
Yeah, so it was, I remember, I liked it. Me and my friends were talking about it back in the day. But as far as like all these critical, like how much money did it make, we didn't think like that when we were 10 or whatever it was. So it's interesting to be like, oh yeah, everyone else liked it too. So the world liked it. So that was pretty cool to read that. So the characters, I really liked the characters, even the ones I didn't like, I liked them. So I thought that was great. Indiana Jones, we'd never, I guess we saw him as Han Solo, Harrison Ford as Han Solo.
Yeah.
Kind of got that flavor a little bit. Yeah.
Sarcasm, the swagger, the cockiness, so I could see a lot of Han Solo in this. And that's kind of what was the draw for me, is like, oh, Han Solo's in this. All right. The guy that plays Han, I'm going to go see this. That was a big draw.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about Indiana Jones now as a character? Is he entertaining still?
Oh yeah, he's awesome. Well, and the cool thing about this is like that opening scene. I was thinking about it as I rewatched it, and I don't remember another movie that packaged up a character that well, that quickly. I mean, in 5 minutes, you knew who he was, you knew his personality, you knew, you just knew the guy already, and so it didn't take any time to warm up to him or anything. And yeah, he's still kind of that little, smirk that he's got and everything. Even as you watch the previews for the new one, it's just like, oh yeah, an old friend, you know.
Yeah. He's a man's man. He's the
he
guy
is.
that every guy wishes they were, right?
And
Leather
every girl
jacket.
who wants to date
Yeah.
or be with.
Leather jacket, fedora, leather whip. The whip.
See, that's the thing about this movie is it made all these things. A fedora is not a thing that in the 80s was cool.
No.
A whip instead of a gun, like, you know, you've got like First Blood, you got some of those things happening, and he's carrying around a whip and wearing a fedora, and he's an archaeologist and he works at a college. None of this stuff should make any sense.
And he's wearing a leather jacket in South America and
Going through the
110
jungle.
degrees in the jungle.
Yeah,
with
like-
its rainforest. And he's got a leather jacket on.
does not add up.
The leather shoes. It's just, you know, and the scruff. And he's like a doctor. He's got a PhD. I mean, you don't find that till, you know, 10 minutes in. But he's like, the iconic man's man, you know?
Yeah.
Just like, oh, I wish it's that guy.
Well, there's a bit on Friends when Ross, one of the girls that he's talking to, she's like, "You're like Indiana Jones," and he says, "I am like Indiana Jones." It's like, no, you're not. Archaeologists are not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
So great character, great intro to him, like you said. With that, and I think that first sequence really establishes who he is.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to have this dialogue or, you know, exposition about him. We see him in action. We know who he is, like you said. So I think that's a great scenes, but also a great way to introduce him.
So you asked us to kind of, obviously in preparation of this, to come up with, you know, specifically like 5 things that you liked, you know, maybe some criticisms. As far as those 5 things I like, that opening sequence is right there, right? And I love the opening. I love that they don't show his face until a couple minutes, and then they finally
The shadows.
The guy behind him pulls out a gun. You see the whip knock the gun out. The guy goes running, and then then they turn the camera to him, and it's that moment he steps from the shadow into the light, and you see his face, and you're like, "What a reveal!" I mean, that's just awesome.
That's pretty cool for sure.
Yeah, love that opening sequence. Definitely one of my favorite openings.
And I mean, it's one of those, who hasn't run away from a boulder, an imaginary boulder, right? As a kid, going down the stairs, whatever. I mean, even my kids do that. So yeah, it's pretty
Iconic
cool.
scene.
Yeah.
All right. Marion. As a kid, I did not like her, but I wasn't, as a teen, I wasn't interested in her as much as Indy, right? But, and in subsequent watches as I got older, more mature, I was like, she's all right. But I would say that this last time today, when I rewatched it, I was like, I like her. She's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think she's, out of all the side or the female characters in Indiana Jones up to this point, she is the one that can really hang with him, can take what he gives, give it back,
Drink you under the table.
drink you under the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really have a lot of respect for her.
She's definitely, of all of the women in the movie that play his kind of counterpart, she's the one most like him. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
So that was a surprise for me to kind of realize, like, oh, she is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and she's smart too.
Yeah.
I mean, she traveled the world with her dad, who was, you know, basically Indiana Jones's mentor, from what you know here. So you know that she's pretty, she can handle herself, and she's no dummy. She can definitely knows things for sure. Yeah.
And she had a great intro as well, right? With that drinking game.
Yeah.
In where were they? In Nepal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she just junked that dude under the table, and she's fine.
Yeah.
Then 5 minutes later, she's fighting people,
Yeah.
shooting at people or whatever.
Yep.
So, yeah, she had a
Hitting
great
him over the head with burning logs and and she didn't seem to act scared at all. Of course, not when the fire poker came out. Then she was like, but no screaming, right? Not once, I think, in that movie do you hear her scream like a damsel in distress, right?
There were a couple of times, actually.
Oh, yeah?
In the Well of Souls
Okay, yeah, that's true.
with all the zombies. or mummies.
Yeah, but anyone would scream with dead
Yeah,
bodies.
I would be screaming.
Yeah. Dead bodies all over
But yeah,
me.
compared to Willie,
Yeah,
Yeah.
who screamed the whole time.
screaming a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah, I liked her this go around. Sala, he's a good character. He's more the comedic sidekick, right?
Yeah.
He had the jokes, the one-liners, and kind of the funny guy. What do you guys think about Sala?
Yeah. I mean, well, and I tried to watch it not knowing, like forgetting that he's an ongoing character and a close friend and stuff. But yeah, he's cool. And I thought, like Indiana Jones, he's pretty connected around the world. He's got all these people helping out and looking out for him. But yeah, I liked him. And then, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he definitely has a reputation, right? Throughout the movies, Dr. Jones had, people are like,
Yeah.
the famous Dr. Jones. So he's definitely, there's lots of stories of him that have, kind of made him immortal, that have gotten around in circles around the world as he's traveled.
That's right.
And things like that.
Which I have to keep reminding myself, he's a college professor, like the famous guy who teaches college.
Yeah. The famous Dr. Jones. Yeah. Right. He's famous. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Famous for what though?
I liked him. He did his job. He's a great supporting character.
Yep.
Yeah,
Love Sala. Love the character
Yeah.
Sala.
I'm glad he was able to come back.
Yeah. That'll be cool.
Then Belloc, the bad guy. There's him and the other guy, Tote, that had the glasses. But Belloc seemed to be the main villain here.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, he wasn't bad, but he wasn't very menacing. Like
No.
he was he always talked about, like, hey, we're associates with Dr. Jones, with Indy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're kind of the same people, do the same thing, but he's taken a different path.
Yeah.
So I didn't.
Yeah, he doesn't get his hands dirty.
He's not someone that like Indiana, in a fist fight, obviously he's not even on the same level,
Right.
but he's the guy that you love to hate because he clearly consistently gets Indiana Jones's goat, right?
Right.
You can tell that he's like, wherever Indiana is, he's right there to steal it right
I'll
out
just
from
wait
underneath him.
outside.
Let him do all
on
the
your way
work.
out.
Yeah. And so
Yoink.
he does make a great arch enemy in that respect. Not because he poses a physical threat, but he's just always, he's like a thorn in your side. He's just always there. And of course, they really ride the coattails of the whole Nazi machine. And that's really the ominous, like, ooh, the Nazis. That theme is where you really get kind of like, these are the bad guys.
Yeah. And he's French, so
That's right.
You just lost all your
Right, I'm
French
sorry, French
viewership.
It was 1936. It's been a while. Then Tote, he was kind of creepy. I remember
He was
Yeah.
creepy.
when I was a kid, I was like, ugh,
He was, yeah.
Yeah.
kind of scared of him. But
Yeah, when I was a kid watching it, he definitely was the one that gave you that menacing vibe. That was his role,
Yeah,
for sure.
no line he wouldn't cross,
Yeah, and just that rat, squirrely, kind of slinky guy, all black, and just kind of like
sniveling.
snivel. Yeah, exactly. And he comes into that bar and he's gonna burn her with the poker. That guy was like, when I was a kid, I was definitely like, ooh, don't like that guy.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Any other characters that stood out to you?
The monkey.
Yeah.
The monkey was, it's always good to have a
Traitor.
monkey around. Was the monkey a Nazi monkey?
Yeah. Well, no,
Because he
No.
didn't he do a Heil Hitler thing at one point?
I think he's kind of like he was teamed up with his owner, who was a local, who I think they're more or less just basically your, like, hey, informant. They'll work for the highest bidder.
Well, and then the monkey was around for a while, but I kept thinking, I think that monkey is a Nazi, and so why are they being cool to the Nazi monkey?
No,
But
he was a spy.
he was a spy
yeah,
working for the dude.
Yeah. I did like Captain Katanga. He was brief appearance, the captain of the ship. At the end, the freighter at the end. I thought he was pretty entertaining. I liked him. So, but yeah, other than that, I think that's.
What about the Nazi goons and the the main guy, the tall one, who's kind of like.
Yeah.
What did you think of him?
He played his part. I mean, he's the Nazi, so like you said, the Nazi machine. So he represented that. You can't have Hitler in the movie, so I think for me that was he was the leader of that Nazi party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, didn't have much to do. I was surprised he was there at the end, right, with the three of them when they opened the Ark. But
Yeah.
he was good. He was mean. Yeah. The government agents at the beginning and the professor. Oh, what's his name?
Oh yeah, his old buddy.
Yeah,
whatever.
his friend. I forgot to write his name down, but those guys are good supporting characters. They kind of stuck it to him at the end when they took the Ark and put it in a warehouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I liked them. They're good.
Yeah. Well, and I the one scene that made me laugh is when Indiana Jones is like ready to go off on this adventure, and he opens up his suitcase and he puts his hat and his whip in there, and he's like done packing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like,
That's how I pack.
this is so written by a man. Like
Yeah.
anyway,
So that character is Dr. Marcus.
Yeah, Marcus Brody.
Marcus.
Marcus
There
Brody.
you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he shows up in most of them,
Yeah.
and he's pretty clueless in all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I loved him in 3.
Yeah. Last Crusade.
Yeah, Last
Yeah.
Crusade. He's not in the second one. But that's another topic.
That's next week's.
That's next
Yeah.
week.
That's the real show.
So themes present throughout the movie: religion,
Yes.
God. Like, are they real? That's kind of Indiana Jones was a non-believer. Like, he didn't necessarily believe in God, or he was hesitant to do so.
That's what you think? I wouldn't have gotten that impression. I know he was just kind of like, Marcus was like, this is like nothing you've ever gone after before. And he's like, oh, I don't believe in any of that superstition.
Yeah.
But I don't think Indiana Jones is a non-believer.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But I don't know that he believes like any of like.
Kind of like a realist kind of guy.
Yeah, he's like, yeah. I mean, maybe there's a God, maybe there's not, but there's definitely not. No,
He's definitely got a reverence for it, though.
Yeah.
Like whether he's a believer or not, in all these, he's got a reverence for.
a respect for religion.
Yeah, religion,
and maybe
he
might believe in some sort of, but he's a very educated man, so he's going to have a knowledge of world religions and different beliefs, and he probably lands somewhere on that spectrum.
Yeah.
Versus a complete atheist. I don't know if I would take him like
I don't
that.
think he's an atheist. I think he's ambivalent.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, what's most important to him is the history and the artifacts, and he definitely knows the Bible. Mm-hmm. We learn later on that his dad's religious, so he probably has a religious upbringing.
Yeah, and he was a Boy Scout.
He was a Boy Scout. Yeah.
Lived in
Do
Utah.
the math.
So yeah, it's just the whole, what place does religion have? And Hitler was trying to weaponize it. He's like searching out these occult items of the occult.
Which is a whole interesting thing that no one really talks about, like, because Belloc is Jewish, right?
I don't know.
Is he?
I couldn't tell.
That was the impression I got at the end.
At the end, yeah, he dresses up in all the gear. And
He's
has
the
all
one
symbolism.
who's going to open it, and he seems to be.
But why would a Jew be working? Yes, but I was thinking, why would a Jew be working with the Nazis?
Right. Yeah. Well, and why would the Nazis be working with the Jew?
Yeah, why would they employ him?
But he's obviously religious, because they're like, at the end, they're like, hey, I don't know if I'm comfortable with you in this religious ceremony. And he's like, what would you rather do? Open this up? We should probably open it up first to see what we're going to find, and as opposed to open it in front of your Führer, your Hitler, your leader.
Yeah.
But that just makes him that much more of a snake, right? If he is.
Well, I think that's why the Ark reacted that way, because he was officiating. He wasn't a Levite priest, right? So he was all dressed up in their gear, in their ceremonial gear. And he was,
So you think he was just acting the part?
Yeah.
Not religious, but
Yeah.
like, hey, let's just
Go through the motions.
let's go through the motions and
so I
see
think
what
that's
happens.
why the Ark reacted that way and killed him. Because they're the Nazis, they're bad guys.
But
So I think
But if Hitler really believes that the Ark has power, then that must mean he believes in a God, right?
That has that power.
That has that power. And the story that the Bible shares, that the armies that were led by the Ark defeated everyone. So that's kind of an interesting thought when you think of it in that perspective.
And he's trying to eliminate all the Jews. So he eliminates them and then uses their religion against, well, probably them and the rest of the world.
Yeah,
It's pretty twisted.
That's very twisted. And so, as he eliminating well, we won't get into that, but I was like, this is weird
Yeah.
or interesting.
But I think it was purposeful in the sense that Spielberg is Jewish.
Right.
So I think Kazan is as well.
Probably. Yeah.
So I think that was part of their, they
Motivation.
They thought through that and this.
And who else is a better enemy than in the 30s than the Nazis? I mean, that's what history was, right? At that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any other themes that you guys noticed or want to talk about?
Well, there's definitely things I want to talk about.
As far as overall themes, anything else?
I mean, other beyond what we've talked about,
Yeah.
good versus evil,
Yeah, all the normal ones.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the things we liked about it. So if someone's talking about it and you're like, oh yeah, that's mine too, jump in and we'll just have a conversation about that. And if not, then you can add your things too. I don't know, Blake. What's the first thing or one of the things that you liked about Raiders of the Lost Ark?
So, and we talked about it just a little bit. I mean, just the personality of it, and that in this movie, kind of like no other movie, like his character is so consistent, and it just kind of gets summed up. And there's so many scenes that are like, that's so Indiana Jones, and like the scene, I mean, famous scene, with the sword fight and he's just, and kind of there's the backstory of all of that and why it was filmed that way and everything. But that's just a cool scene where it's like this drama just raises and he's just like, easiest solution. Shoot him, turn around, on to the next thing, So that's one of my favorite scenes,
Yeah.
And then they play off on it again in the greatest of the series, Temple of Doom again. So
I think you might be tipping your hat a little bit.
I might be, but
Yeah. So I like they show not tell who Indiana Jones is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's like you said, the sword fight scene. It just contributes to all that, so that's pretty cool.
yeah, the way he fights in general, it's loose, it's
He gets hit.
sloppy, it's
And he gets hit and he gets punched, but he he comes back, right? It's not like one of these things where he's dodging every punch and never gets hit and he beats everyone up.
he kind of lucks through every fight he's in, and
Yeah.
So one of my favorite pieces. Yeah.
So for me, I would just classify that as the whole scene in the whole bizarre scene, not BIZR, but BAZAAR, right? Yeah. The whole bizarre scene where they're running through,
The basket.
the baskets, all of that, the music, the almost kind of like the Keystone Cops and music, and they're running around and she's, fending off, and she's got the pan and the monkey and the people split like the Red Sea, because this guy, that he has a reputation. He's dressed all in black. He pulls out the big sword. All of it. The love that scene. Opening scene. Second favorite part. That's the bizarre scene. Yeah. Loved it.
Yeah. And along with scenes, mine would be the bar fight in Nepal. Mm-hmm. It was pretty brutal and just like I just get the sense of raw. It's
Yeah.
like, it's so intense. There's fire. People are getting shot in the head. We see their blood leaking out the forehead. It's just like, and there wasn't a lot of music. I noticed this time. It's just like sounds from the fight, people grunting and yelling, and there was no third party like hype it up. It's just the scene itself was hype and very intense.
Yeah. So my third favorite scene was the Nepal bar fight scene. I love that scene.
It's really good
for those reasons, and up into and including the sound. When Indy's gun, that sound effect they use for his gun, it's like no other gun in any other movie. It's like it hits you. You hear that kapow, and it's like you feel it, you hear it, and it's distinct. And I think it's his. They use that same sound effect in all his movies whenever he shoots a gun, that kind of gun. Yeah. But I love that scene. I love that he burned his hand.
Yeah.
I love that they brought the poker out. I love everything about that scene. It was raw. It was gritty. It sets up the next part. I love it. Shows how tough she is. The bar burns down. And
now
she's
they're partners.
And now
Now they're
we're
partners,
partners and everything. I love everything. I loved it. I loved
good.
it. Yeah.
And I think the movie as a whole is more raw than a lot of films.
Yeah.
Because I think they did that, and then Temple of Doom ramped it up even more, and then they had to come out with the PG-13, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
it's getting so. I don't want to, and it wasn't like gratuitous violence or blood. It was just.
And because of the way special effects were done at that time, it felt even more gritty. I think
more real.
like at the end. One of the other scenes I really like. I mean, at the end when. They open the Ark and all that's happening. And then it's kind of like, I was like, this is just like Steven Spielberg's Inglourious Bastards, because it's like a Nazi's face melts down to the bone.
The other guy's
Somebody's
head
like, I'm like, his head's doing some weird stuff. And then I forgot that it exploded.
Yeah.
And I was just, I liked it.
Yeah, it's cool.
I mean, it's great. I love that she punches him. She doesn't slap him. She punches him with the fist. Yeah. He's like, oh, come on, man. He turns around and she's just like, kapow, right in his face. And he's like, ow, that really hurt.
Yeah.
And she wasn't like, ow, that hurt. She just hauls off and decks him. Yeah. And he's just kind of like,
yeah, I deserve that.
I deserve that. And he's like, she's like, I was young. And he's like, you knew what you were doing, which that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, there were some things like maybe that line wouldn't make it this time around.
Yeah, we'll get into that later on. But that showed her toughness, and I really liked her.
Yeah, she could hold her own for sure. Yeah. Loved it.
Of all her scenes, that's my favorite, right? Because, I mean, they basically put her in a dress almost... And the poor girl pretty much has to act in a dress throughout the rest of the movie. Either a dress or like a nightgown. And I'm like, oh, come on. But, whatever.
Okay. What's next for you, Blake?
Oh, let's see. I'll skip. Go ahead, Nate.
Well,
I can't think of another one.
So my next favorite scene is... although you said 5, because I could have more.
That's fine.
Yeah, but of course,
at least 5.
The Ark scene and him, the map room and then the Well of Souls. I thought that was all really cool. But I really liked the flying wing fight scene. Yeah.
It's on my list too.
That was really cool. And the plane and the fuel and the really big guy.
Big dude.
And
he's kicking his butt.
He's kicking his butt. He's just mopping the floor with them. And, he's hitting them with... There's a little bit of comedy in there. She knocks out the pilot and uses the gun to blow up the truck or to shoot the truck. He's fighting the big guy. Yeah. But, man... and then the fuel, I remember watching that scene and the fuel leaking and getting to the fire and watching it. I remember feeling like, well, it's like
These guys are in trouble.
these guys
Yeah.
are in trouble. How are they going to get out of
yeah,
this?
it's pretty tense.
It was tense. I remember as a kid thinking to myself, "Oh, there's some impending, doom about to happen. How are they going to get out? Oh no, is she going to die? Is she going to get hurt?"
yeah.
And then of course that part when the propeller hits
And
that guy.
Indiana Jones just kind of like turns,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the dude's like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was pretty like whoa.
Yeah.
That was pretty
was
gruesome.
crazy,
It's
yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's awesome. I loved it. I love that the whole flying wing scene.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that fight scene. I thought that whole setup was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
And this time when I watched it, I was like, where are they going to put that ark?
Yeah.
There's no cargo hold.
Yeah.
Like
Again,
just strap it on top.
Yeah.
Again,
Put
I
it
got
on top.
another
Put
list.
it on the ski rack.
I got another list of things, but we'll talk about those later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
No, and then the other scene that I liked is when he's teaching at the beginning,
Oh yeah.
and the girl's like got her "I love you" across her
Her eyelashes.
eyelids,
Yeah.
and
eyelids. Yeah.
and then it pans across and it's like that room's full of like
Yeah.
90
90%
girls and one guy, and then at the end they all leave, and I'm just like, man, he is the man's man. And then the one male student gives him an apple,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, I forgot about that. Kids gave teachers apples, I guess.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
But yeah, that scene with just all those girls just fawning over him.
Yeah.
You're like, he's the real deal.
Yes, he is.
The man's man.
That's pretty brazen for a student. Like it is college, but to put love you on your eyelids
Guess that's what they did in the
and
30s.
to be blinking them
And
like
she
that.
needed help because I don't think she
Yeah.
could do it herself.
Yeah, that took some skill for sure.
Yeah. Well, what about you?
Marion, I've talked about her already, but she's definitely one of the things I liked is Marion. She's strong. We talked about it. She comes out strong, and then throughout the movie, she's strong. And I think it was, she gets in the nightgown on the ship, right?
Yeah.
And she's
The
like,
dress in the tent, the nightgown on the
Yeah.
ship.
It's like, where does it hurt? And he's like, my elbow,
Yeah.
and my forehead.
Yeah.
And then she kisses him and he falls asleep. And I was like, dude, that's not real. There's no way some hot girl's kissing you. He's like, let's knock. But I noticed when they wake up, when the Nazis catch him, she's not wearing the nightgown anymore.
Oh,
So
yeah.
something happened.
There you go.
I didn't notice that.
But I've talked about, throughout, just I really liked her. Seeing it this time, I was impressed with her character. So
Well, I love that she bashes him in the face with the mirror.
Yeah.
And the scream that he belts out, you can hear it. Like they have to leave
Leave the ship.
ship and put a point of view from the camera that's like a mile away, and you still hear it like But yet she's like, "Did you say something?" or something like that. Yeah, that was pretty funny. That was good.
Yeah.
So we've heard. So you love the bar fight scene. You love Marion as a character.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the third one you like?
The practical sets just
Okay.
add that layer of realism.
Yeah.
I really felt like this movie could be a real thing. 'Cause
Absolutely.
when a lot of times the special effects, the visual effects add something to the movie, but a lot of times you can tell, that's fake.
Obviously.
I'm going with it, but that's fake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in TV shows because they don't have the budget. But you didn't get that. Though. Well, I got it when they were opening up the Well of Souls for the first time. Well, the only time. But in the background, there's like this storm. It's lightning.
Yeah.
You can kind of tell it's in a stage, and this is just
Like a sound stage. Yeah. Yeah.
so. There is that, and then the end with the angels. Well, at the time, it was cutting edge, right?
Yeah.
But now,
You're
not
right.
so much. But outside of those two moments, everything was really good. Like you feel like you're there running from the boulder, right?
Yeah.
You feel like you're
Like all the booby traps going off and
Yeah.
stepping on the wrong thing and all of that. You're just like, oh my gosh. And again, as a kid, like, how much of that did you reenact, walking down the sidewalk and
Yeah.
all of
Every
the
kid's
above,
dream, right?
Yeah.
To find
Yeah.
be on a treasure hunt with booby traps, right?
Yeah.
That you're trying to figure out.
and you don't really get that in movies nowadays.
No.
I don't remember a movie I watched in a long time that's this real. Like you
Yeah.
feel like you're there, you're
Yeah.
watching it happen.
Filmed on
On
location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, me too.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Because now, because I think partly because you can do so much with special effects, they're just so
Yeah.
out. I mean, and it's cool, and it's like, oh my gosh, a whole city just got leveled or whatever. But
Yeah.
you're
It's
not really
amazing.
there.
Well,
Yeah.
even The Mandalorian, a lot of it's filmed in, is it The Void or the
Volume.
The volume? Yeah. It's just this, the TV screens that circle and they just
Yeah.
kind of bring in stuff to put on the ground. But, and I think it looks really good.
yeah, it looks awesome.
But could you imagine them filming The Mandalorian and having to go to on-site locations to get all those shots? It would cost 10 times as much money.
yeah, they'd have to use that chosen city every week.
Yeah.
Be crazy. It'd be insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was the way you made movies then.
then, yeah.
I mean, there was no other way to make a movie.
Yeah.
If you're gonna need a scene with mountains, you go somewhere where there's mountains.
Yeah.
Right. That's just it. Of course, matte painting was pretty much the standard approach to a lot of that stuff.
There's a lot
right?
of good matte paintings out there. But
Yeah.
Still, it's not the end scene when they put the Ark in the warehouse. That's a matte painting.
Yes. Yeah.
At least the background is.
Yeah.
And that was cool too. When that scene where you're just like, oh man, there's a lot of adventure out there. That is a big warehouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never ending. Where is
Yeah.
this place?
And at the time, I didn't know it was a matte
Yeah,
painting.
yeah.
It looked real to me. It was only later on when they start releasing all how they made this, how they watch that stuff. You're like, wow, that's that. On Disney Plus, there's the whole Industrial Light and Sound. Genesis, how it began and advances. If you ever have a chance to watch that
Yeah,
show,
I
if
need
you
to watch
haven't,
that, yeah.
it's really good to watch the whole George Lucas and how he did all of that, and was part of this. That company was part of all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Anything else for you? Or what's next for you? I guess.
No, I think those were the ones for me. I think I went through mine.
Okay.
But
The only one I would add is just the end, which you touched on,
Yeah.
though. I love the end. The melting faces, the angels of death swimming
yeah,
around.
when that angel comes up and you're like, not too bad, and then
Yeah.
things go sideways, like her face gets all distorted.
Yeah.
And then people just start, yeah.
And the lightning goes out and busts and goes through
Goes
everyone
through
all
everybody's
at once,
chests
like fingers of death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their faces start to melt, and you're just like, that was like amazing. That was like
It's still
so
pretty
cool.
cool.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I to this day, I just like one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do
definitely.
like with the melting, I was just like, how did they do that? Like, how did they, I mean, it doesn't look real,
Right.
but it looks super cool. How did they I don't know, just put it under a heat lamp and I don't know.
Yeah. Time lapse,
It
and
was
fast
pretty
forward
cool.
it. Yeah. I mean, but it's almost kind of like they melt, but it's almost like I'm okay with the fact that it's like, okay, it looks like wax, but it's almost like this is not heat melting. This is like
Spirit melting.
spirit God melting you, right? So it's kind of like
gonna
you're.
look
It's
different.
going to look different than if you're standing next to a bonfire melting you. You're
Yeah.
just your flesh is like getting liquefied. Basically, is what it looked
Yeah.
like, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And the head explodes.
Yeah. And it,
I loved it. It was so cool.
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
And they had to put flames in front of that to make it not rated R.
Oh, really?
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
And this was PG because PG-13 didn't exist yet,
Yeah.
right? Which
Yeah.
we'll talk about. I know.
So they had to kind of obscure it a little bit so you didn't. So it wasn't as graphic, I guess.
Huh, interesting. Yeah.
wow.
Loved it. Those are my five. Those are my five. So the opening credit scene, the bar fight scene, the bizarre scene, the flying wing, and then the end. Those
Yeah.
were like those are all scenes that I was just like, those are awesome.
Yeah.
My last one is kind of related, but it's to a previous one I had, but it's the development of Indy and Marion's relationship.
Yeah.
'Cause he shows up, she doesn't like him, she hits him, right? And then they start working together. And even then, in the middle parts, they're just kind of partners.
Yeah.
and then towards the end, from the freighter on, their romance is rekindled.
Yeah.
I kind of got the feel that there was a complicated history, like we talked about, and even though she kind of punched him, I mean, who hasn't been punched by a girl that loved you, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's a rite of passage. And it was just great to see at the end how they connected still. And so the next chronological film is Last Crusade, and then Crystal Skull, right? So sometime between that and Last Crusade, do you think they got married? Or were they just living together and had a kid? Or-
so
No, I don't think they.
I don't think they ever got married. I think, and I was always, I always, with these types of shows, I always feel that way. Like,
They were
even
together,
like
but they never
Mission
got married.
Impossible and things like that. It's
James
like
Bond.
that was such a good relationship, and then the next episode or the next movie, there, it's like it never happened or whatever. But yeah, I don't know.
It's hard to marry a hero off because you always have to there always has to be a romantic element that you're in every movie. And once you marry, Ethan Hunt
agreed.
off, it kind of killed it.
Heck no, dude.
It did for me.
I get what you're saying, but those shows just keep getting better
No,
and
but-
better.
But the point being,
Kinda
though,
like
is
Fast and Furious.
they recognize. But even they recognize, like, oh, we probably shouldn't have married him unless they intentionally, like, we're gonna have him get married, but he's gonna have to, like, because I like his relationship with the new girl a lot. The other spy for the British
Than
MI6
his
girl,
first
than
love.
Rebecca Ferguson.
the Rebecca
Yeah,
Ferguson.
makes a little more sense. And you're right. I mean, that's something. It's like excess baggage, you know.
Well, now there's
it's
no
hard
more.
to-
There's no little romance. Not that those Mission Impossible movies, like 1, 2, and 3, didn't have any of that, and they didn't need it. But once you
3 did, yeah.
did 3 have, is
3
that
is when he, yeah.
Okay.
But
yeah? But that's. But once you kind of marry him off, it's kind of like, oh, he's like an international spy. They don't like James Bond. Once they, it's just kind of like, it kind of like kills.
It's like
it a little
Friends,
bit.
right?
Yeah.
Ross and Rachel could never get together permanently until the last episode.
Right.
Or else there's no story there because that's
Yeah.
their story.
yeah.
That's what we want to see, that tension. We want to see that back and forth. And once it gets in, then it kind of like, okay, we got to talk about something else. And it's like,
Well, I think they were together for a little while, a year or two at least.
Yeah, it had to
Yeah.
have been.
they were together. I mean,
Well, we know they were together at least for a little bit of time, right? Because didn't they have a kid?
Yep.
yeah.
So-
And she's, he says, she's his one true love out of all his relationships.
Yeah.
She was the one that he really cared about.
How do you think, like, let's say in between Raiders and Last Crusade, there's an adventure with those two, where he's the main guy and she's kind of like, she's the Sala, the sidekick.
Are you asking, do I think if one happened? Or
No, how would
it
that-
go if they
yeah,
did
yeah,
that movie?
yeah? How would that be interesting to you? Or
I think it would have
Yeah.
back in the day. I think it'd be hard to do right now, you know.
yeah,
yeah, I totally would have been on board with that kind of movie.
yeah,
But they're not married. They're just
yeah.
a
There's
couple.
They could be married. They could be like newlyweds, like crazy stuff happening, and do that angle or something.
I don't want
but,
them married, but
Yeah,
because it's kind of like what you just brought up. Once they're married, then you have to, then you have to break them apart for the other, and then that means they would have had to have gotten a divorce. And that kind of like ruins it for me.
yeah.
So I'd rather them just be together, kind of like, and then they just kind of like, something happens
Things
or
get in the way.
things get in
Yeah.
the way, they get annoyed, they separate, but then they finally, once they get older and settle down and they're not so crazy, then they get back together and then get married. But they're always one another's true love.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it ended up, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
But I wonder how it goes in Dial of Destiny, right? Because I don't
know what the storyline's going
Yeah,
to be.
because
think she's in it.
they got married at the end of
Crystal Skull.
Crystal
of
Skull.
whatever that fourth one was called.
I think they're going to kill her off.
Like
I'm
they
just
did
guessing.
like they did with Henry Jones.
They're gonna
Sr.
say she's dead, that she died.
There's
She
a picture on the desk of, of
Her next to Henry.
next to the dad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's just gonna be. She's gonna have. They,
Or maybe they're together, and he's like, I gotta go on this one last adventure, honey.
nah, she's
I'll be
not.
back.
Can we even see? Can you even look up to see if she's in it?
I don't know. I haven't seen any rumors or postings about it, so probably not.
Yeah. Don't spoil it. Don't look. At least don't say anything. I'm going into this one clean.
All right, I won't say anything.
Okay, so things we didn't like. Mine, I had a hard time coming up with things I didn't like.
Yeah. Yeah, me too, because I didn't remember. It's not my favorite. And I did start watching Temple of Doom after this was done, and I was like, oh yeah, this is still my favorite.
That's why I like this
it
one.
holds up.
Okay.
But you know, I had trouble finding it as well, and I actually liked it, and it ages really well, I think. But the one thing I didn't, that kind of caught me a couple of times. We've mentioned it earlier, is it's a little antiquated with Marion, and she's like it's almost like they give her this feisty character, and she can hold her own. But you know what? Let's remind everybody that Indiana Jones is the real hero here. Let's put her in a basket, and she's a damsel in distress. Mm-hmm. And then she can hold her own when she's when she was in the tent, and he put the dress on her, and she gets the knife, and she's ready to, escape. Yeah. And then they kind of keep going, let's reel her back in. Let's, and so that kind of bugged me just a little bit this time.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
But
so you would want, well, I wanted to, but so you're saying you would want an equal, like Indiana Jones is a badass, Marion's a badass, and they work together.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it was almost like, even in those scenes, I was like, oh, I'm good with this, and then I was kind of like, oh, that's a little off-putting, or whatever, went just a little bit too far, where it felt like it wasn't kind of aligned with her character. Like she totally just held her own in that bar fight, and then she's in a basket, and she just can't figure out how to escape, and so
makes sense,
a couple of little inconsistencies there, but minor things,
Mine are kind of lame, but it bothered me. One, I've talked about the visual effects are dated.
Yeah,
that's you can't help that. I mean,
that's not. Yeah,
for the time they were awesome.
At least he didn't replace guns with walkie-talkies or anything like that.
They didn't go
like
back and
all the
change
Nazis with walkie-talkies instead of guns.
Yeah, I see him. There he is. Go get him. Yeah. So, but another, I would say the big one that I noticed is this movie's only an hour and 55 minutes.
Okay.
And so it's a shorter movie.
Yeah.
And probably at least 5 minutes of that is credits, if not longer. And it did seem like there was stuff missing, like in the editing process maybe, or it just seemed like Marion dies and then he's in a bar drinking and then he's back to doing what he's doing. Like there's not a lot of time that passes to flesh out.
I kind of noticed that, like when he thought she was dead, like 10 seconds later, he was super excited about something. I can't remember what it was, but I was like,
the staff.
Yeah.
The length of the staff. He meets with. Well, he's like to Saul. He's like, Marion's dead, and he's like, yep, I heard. And they're like, he's like, come on, let's go. And they go, and they meet the guru guy who tells them the whole, like, they're talking
subtract
about
one kadam for
yeah.
God. Yeah, so it's just kind of, and it happened a couple times, and then the chase scene on the truck was, it seemed like that was a little too long. Like he was bumping people off the side of the truck, running people off the side of the road. And that just seemed kind of drawn out longer than it needed to be because it slowed down the actual intensity of the chase because these other things were happening that didn't really matter. I don't know. So just kind of the pacing maybe or the editing of it would just seemed a little, like I noticed it. So that's and it's kind of lame, but that's kind of what. And otherwise, a great movie. That's one of the few things.
None of those things that I notice, but I can understand why they didn't hit my mind. But I get where you're coming from. I wouldn't disagree. But none of those things really bothered me. But I see what you're saying. My biggest issues, and this is the kind of stuff that only comes up in a rewatch, right?
Yeah.
These are the kinds of things
Yeah.
that like when you're
Like when you're
watching
watching, looking kind of.
yeah, and you're like, you've seen it a million times, and then you start not looking at the main thing, but you're like, what's going on over there and there?
Yeah.
So for me, just they are kind of ticky tacky things, but like there's a lot of, to me, there's some continuity issues that when on a rewatch, you're like, that just doesn't make sense. Like he has a revolver the whole movie, but in the bar fight scene, he has a 45 semi-automatic. When he's shooting in the bar, like, and with a clip, I'm like, at no point in time does he ever have that gun. Where did that come from? Because he throws a revolver into a suitcase.
Yep.
But then in the bar fight scene, and it's not something that probably anyone would even really notice, but when he's in the bar, he doesn't have a revolver. He's got a 45, and he's like, pow, pow, pow. And he's like, and he shoots it a ton of time. And then he goes back to having a revolver again. So where did that gun come from? Like,
Was it discarded? Did he lose his gun at some point? I can't remember.
no, he throws the revolver in the suitcase.
Yeah.
And then the next time he pulls it out.
Yeah.
And then,
the 45 is a carry on.
Yeah.
and then when they're in the bazaar, he has the revolver again. And I'm like, okay, that.
Well, maybe did one of the Nazis drop it in the bar and he picked it up because he lost his gun?
You just see him. You see him come in. So in the bar scene, she's about to get the fire poker in her face. And all of a sudden he shows up and he whips the fire poker out of his hand. It skips across the floor. That's what starts the fire. But at no point do they show a camera like see a gun on the ground and him reach and pick it up. And why would he do that anyways? He has a revolver in his holster that he carries. So I'm like, well, where did that come from? And why? I mean, like, and then like, there's just some, again, when in the opening scene, when he's running from the natives, like it's this big open field, like no jungle. It's like a grassy knoll. There's no trees. But when they flip the camera around the other way, there's all of a sudden he's in a jungle, and like you see like, so there's continuity issues with that happens a few times where they show one perspective from looking one direction, but when they flip the camera around and show another direction, it's like a completely different looking environment. There's the truck chase scene. They show him like driving by cliffs.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they'll flip the camera around and there's no cliff there.
Yeah.
The guy just falls off a cliff.
Yeah.
And then they flip the camera around to show the other side. And like, I thought there should be a big giant drop off right there, but it's just all palm trees and jungle. What happened to the cliff?
Yeah, I noticed that this last time too. Is like all of a sudden he bumps them, like woo, fly out the cliff, and like where'd that come from?
And then
it's like this big desert.
Yeah, and then there's like jungle and trees, but then the next scene they turn a corner and there's not a tree for hundreds of miles. Now he's traveling from one place to the other, but so I mean, to your point, that seems like a really long, but it is presumably he is traveling a great distance. But there's a lot of continuity types of things that I was just like, you would never when you're watching it for the first time, you would never pick up on. You would just kind of be like,
be in the moment the first time. Yeah.
But then when you're watching it and you know the story and you know everything that happens, the whole Well of Souls, the whole staff, he drops down into the and this is the other thing is the snakes. I'm like, come on, those snakes been sealed in that room for 3,000 years and just eating each other, and there's no
water.
There's no water. Where's all the snake poop? And where's all the snake skins? Because they shed, right? And where's all the skeletons at? And they're slithering out of walls. And then they're like, it's supposed to be something that's like really difficult to find. And he pushes a statue through a wall, and there's another room that's got a crack in it.
He pushes the block
and he
out.
just pushes a 3-ton block out with his hand, and you see it bounce in the shadow when it hits the ground. And there's the plan, and I'm like, well, didn't anyone ever like
what's over there behind that wall?
Yeah, no one thought to like look through that crack and wonder what's on the other side of it. It's just kind of like, And then the other thing that the one thing that I was like, what is going on here? That when I did watch it, didn't make any sense to me. Is
So you're on your third thing, by the way.
Well, yeah, that's fine. The submarine thing, like he just sat on top of a submarine. They show it diving.
Yeah, I caught that too.
So
He held his breath.
Well,
what I know that there's a deleted scene, and they show in the deleted scene that he's like wrapped
grabs
around
the
a telescope, periscope, and he just rides that. But they would have were in the ocean for like 3 days.
it was a long distance.
That's a
'cause
long distance.
They showed it descending, and then they did the map line.
Yeah.
And it was like another 100 miles.
So even as a little kid, I do remember as a little kid, I remember watching it, going, "What? How did he survive? He's on a submarine," and then they show it like doing the whole diving part. So they never really explained that. But other than
I read the comic book, and there was a panel in there where he uses his whip to lash himself to the periscope.
yeah, I'm sure they can explain it, but whatever explanation they have, it wouldn't have made any sense. The only explanation I would accept is he opens the hatch, sneaks in, and hides somewhere. Anything other than that, where he's just outside of the submarine, just makes to me no sense at all. But, yeah.
No, that's good.
And that's the danger of a rewatch, right? Is
Yeah.
you pick up on all these things.
Pick it apart just a little bit.
Yeah.
And I wish.
But none of those things impact my opinion of them.
You got pretty fired up about them all.
Well, that's all right. I'm a fired up kind of guy.
Yeah. No, I just wish that he would have loved snakes. Think of how much more convenient all of these stories would have been if he just would have loved snakes.
Yeah.
Learn to love them.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're his nemesis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else for you that you didn't like or notice?
Dude,
that
no
bothered you?
no short round. That's number 2.
What happened to Short Round? He should have been in this movie.
Yeah, he should have.
Yeah,
he
where
he
was
totally
at?
should have. Like,
He would have been
abandoned
just
him.
a year or two older. So.
yeah. Lost him in a card game or something. I
He
don't
abandoned
know.
him. Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room that everyone always talks about, and that is the overall plot, and that is if Indiana Jones had no impact on the outcome of the movie.
Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about that. Which
Well,
is
no,
that
they talked about it in Big Bang Theory.
right. So
He filed the Ark away. That was his job.
So let's talk about there's like if he hadn't ever been involved, they would have found the Ark. They still would have taken the island,
I
opened
don't know
up,
if
and
they
they all
would
would
have
have
found
died.
They were digging in the wrong spot.
But that's what people will. That's the argument people make. So, and your counter argument would be,
He was the one that he had the staff of raw headpiece, so he's able to get it. He was the one that got it translated. He was the one that figured out where it was. I mean, maybe like in 10 years they would have figured out where it was, because they would have finally excavated.
Because
everything.
without him, they would have got the amulet at the bar
from her. Yep.
because they would have just burned her, found it, whatever.
Okay, so go back before that. You're saying,
But
they would have got the headpiece.
Well,
Yeah.
but they followed him to find her. Right.
Oh, yeah.
But
that's true.
but even still, let's say they figure out another way to find her, right? And
Or
they
just
get
look
the
through that
headpiece.
crack, like you said.
Or they just look through the crack next to that flying wing airplane, and they're like, "Oh, there it is." Even if it took him another 10 years, the question is did his involvement have any impact on the ending? Would they have still gotten the Ark?
The Ark would be on that island.
And will it still have gotten to the island? And they open it up, and they all get their faces burned off.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think he had direct influence on the story that changed the course.
Of course,
events.
he did. Yeah, absolutely.
So, if he hadn't have been there, it wouldn't have played out. They wouldn't. I don't think they would have found it.
Okay, so ultimately, that's what for you is like.
Yeah.
They never would have found the Ark without him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that is definitely holds water, right? Some people will say, well, eventually they found it. Well, no, not necessarily.
When did the war end? When did World War II end?
So World War II hadn't started because this takes place in 36.
Let's check that out.
1936, I think you said. And I
Yeah,
think
36.
World War One started in 30, or World War Two, I'm sorry.
2 is 39 to 45.
39, yeah. So the World War II hadn't started yet and does 39 begin when America got involved, or is that just when Germany invaded? I think Poland was when
Yeah, you gotta look. Yeah, there you go.
Wikipedia.
Let's just say it, yeah.
That's when it started.
Yeah. So
So
World
it
War II
says-
hadn't started yet.
33 is when Hitler first was sworn in, and so things started to go around then.
South, but the actual war, which he
Started
invaded Poland, was 39.
September 39.
Yeah. Okay. So we're technically at World War II hadn't started yet that we know it, and the movie takes place in 36. So the Nazi was a political party.
Not a military.
People hated him for sure. You know,
Had they started killing the Jews at that point?
I don't know,
Yeah.
but World War II hadn't started. So your point is what on that with that, because you brought that up.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember where I was going with that. Okay. Well, I guess I was saying if it happened during the middle or sometime during World War II, eventually it ends and the Nazis are just, disbanded, destroyed, whatever. So it wouldn't have been 10 years or whatever, because the war would have ended and the interest would have waned. So maybe they eventually find it, but the Nazis wouldn't have found it.
Yeah.
But if it happened before World War II, then 10 years could pass and they could find it.
Yeah. And Blake, what do you think? Do you agree with the whole plot hole idea? And then if you do, whether you do or don't, what's your
I'm trying
argument?
to think of a movie where the hero doesn't cause more damage than good until the end and then redeems everything. I mean, that's pretty common storyline, I think.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I think he had some cool fights, hung out with a monkey, and
You really like
it
that
all went well. Yeah, the monkey saved his life.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think it's, for people to say, well, Indiana Jones had no impact on the eventual outcome, that they eventually, whether by accident, they would have found the Ark, whether by design or by accident, ended up on an island and gotten the Ark. And they all would have died. But here's the thing: even if that's true, the Ark would have stayed on the island. The Nazis would have known that it's there, and they just would have sent someone else to go get it and pick it up and bring it back.
Kept trying to figure it out. I mean, it seemed like something that you could weaponize in other ways after they popped that lid,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so to me, he definitely had an impact on the result in the end, because they all get melted, and then he brings it back to the United States and keeps it ultimately out of the Nazis' hands. But remember, Indiana Jones, none of his movies are about the art. He's not trying to get the artifact because he's a treasure hunter, right? He was sent by the U.S. government to get it, to prevent it from getting from the Nazis' hands. Everything, he doesn't end up with the crystal skull. He doesn't end up with, the cup of Christ in his possession. He's not a treasure hunter. He's an archaeologist. He's
it belongs in a museum.
Yeah. So to me, it's not about. To me, I'm like, I get that point. They're like, oh, that could have happened, but that's not what happened.
That's not the point of the movie.
That's not the point of the movie. He did have ultimately an impact because that's what happened in the movie is what happened. So don't speculate. We don't go to movies to pick them apart and be like, well, the result would have been different if this had happened. You're like, well, that's not the story that was told. The story is told as he did get involved, and this is, as a result, these events happened, and that's how it ended. Yeah. So, and that's why we like it.
Yeah. Okay. We talked earlier back in that preview show about where Raiders ends up or is on your list of the 4 movies that are currently out. Has that changed for you? Is it, for me, it was Raiders, Crystal Skull, Last Crusade, Temple of Doom. Is it for me still number 1? Well, we've only watched the one, so it's kind of hard to reevaluate. But I had some, as good as it was, I kind of had some doubts of how good it was compared to the others that I remember. So it's possible that this could slip down for me.
Yeah.
But we won't know until we're done with 4.
True.
Yeah. So I had it third because I like Last Crusade a lot. And I think a lot of it is because I saw this on a 27-inch screen TV in my basement with bad tracking. And no, I really loved it. But, Temple of Doom I saw with friends at a birthday party at the theater.
Yeah.
Last Crusade I saw with, my dad and at the theater. And so
it's a father-son
some of
movie.
them might kind of be those types of things. But this was third on my list just because of the whole... I totally respect that it's the origin, it's the first story or the first movie, but yeah, for pure enjoyment, I watched Last Crusade and Temple of Doom more. And so it was third on my list, but when I watched it, it was like a lot more entertaining than I remembered it being because I haven't watched it in like 6 or 7 years. So I like you. When I watched Last Crusade, I already know Temple of Doom I've already watched like an hour of it and I'm like, yep, it's over. This is it. This is the one.
Okay.
But watching Crusade again will be interesting because and see where they end up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Crystal Skull will be last.
Once you
and
guys
it'll go on
watch
top.
it, it'll be like, boing.
Like
It'll move up that list.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I already have my 4 pegged out in what order they should go in. But I mean, for me, like you, Blake, and probably to me, this was the first movie. So this was my first introduction to Indiana Jones, and I saw it on the big screen. So it has a special place for that sole purpose beyond just the quality of the movie. The movie is awesome, but it had a big impression on me. So every movie after that, for the most part, was just like more of, I expected it to be just more of what I already loved. And for the most part they were. But as far as like did this rewatch specifically change my order? No. Am I confident on what order I'm going to end up in yet? No, I'm not.
Yeah, that's kind of.
I'm confident I know what I'm going to pick as last.
So you guys are talking a lot about nostalgia, like back then, because back then it's number 1 or number 2 or whatever. But what about now, today?
So the other thing about it is this movie. I mean, it's so awesome, but Temple of Doom has a bunch of quotes and things I say with my kids and my wife all the time.
Yeah,
and so it's like a lot more. Not that quotable is a big deal or whatever, but it's a lot more quotable. And there's all these things that are inside jokes and things like that. And so, I don't know.
So what's one that you love to throw out there?
Like Snake Surprise, Monkey Brains, Strong Bridge. You call him Dr. Jones doll. Like, I mean,
yeah,
we'll get into it next time. But as you watch, let it wash over you.
I love Temple of Doom. I mean, to me, all 3 of them are like right up there. Because they only made 3, right?
Well, at my house, there's the trilogy in a box set, and then
that's like a collector's edition.
Crystal Skull in its own case sitting next to it.
There's like the box set collectors, 4K, 8K. You got
commentary,
3 versions of it, the making of, and then you've got the $5 DVD Crystal Skull.
Still in the wrapper. We gotta open and watch that thing.
I remember seeing that in the movie theater. Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So for me, the first 3 are like, they're all like right there. if there's any one of them that I am is just a tick below, and it's just barely, it would be maybe The Last Crusade. But it's just kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, the thing about movies, and this is just movies in general, whenever you make multiples, you kind of have to one up, right?
Yeah.
It's always a one up. And sometimes I worry, or not worry, but sometimes I think that mentality of one upping the last one might push you to do something that you wouldn't maybe do just to make it that much more grander. And maybe you, in hindsight, you'd be like, maybe you shouldn't have done that scene because that's a little too out there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
If they could all figure out how Fast and the Furious does it and just keeps it all nice and believable.
Okay, so next up, Temple of Doom. We'll do a similar format to talk about the themes, the characters, what we liked about it, what we didn't like, and rank it to Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then kind of follow it.
Sounds good to me.
So thanks, everyone, for joining us, listening, and watching our podcast here on the Credible Nerds Podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. We have had some new listeners, some new watchers, so we want to thank you guys for subscribing and joining in on the conversation. We really appreciate that. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel.
It's not the years, kid. It's the mileage.
Yeah.
That's
There you go.
Yeah. So we'll catch you next time.
See ya.